Hey everyone, my name is Gary Smith. Welcome to my channel where I talk about the importance of purpose and how it relates to your approach to your career, your finances, and your life. Today we're going to be talking about purpose and its impact on the development of professional relationships. My special guest today is Andy Lopata. Let's jump right into the conversation. Well, hello, everyone. This is Gary Smith. Welcome to another podcast. Hope you enjoy our time together today. Today, I'm blessed to have a friend with me all the way from the UK, Andy Lopata. Andy is a professional relationship strategist. He's written 5 books on networking and professional relationships. He's been quoted in publications like the Sunday Times and the Financial Times. And as a matter of fact, the Financial Times has labeled Andy as one of Europe's leading business networking strategists. And Forbes.com and The Independent say that Andy is a true master of networking. So Andy, first of all, thank you so much for taking time from your schedule to be with me today. And I'm just really looking forward to our conversation.
Me too. Thanks, Gary. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, so we're going to have some fun today. The first thing that sort of hit me is that you and I are in completely different areas in some respects, because I deal with the whole concept of purpose and helping people discover and activate on their purpose, and you are a relationship strategist. And so to many of our guests, they would seem to think that those are very dissimilar, but I think they may be more closely related than one might think. What's your take on that?
Well, I think part of the beauty of what I do and have done for over 20 years is that you surround yourselves with experts in a range of different topics. And part of the beauty of the topic that I specialize in, professional relationships, is that you see how it impacts on all of those different areas. I'm a great believer in you can always achieve more with the help of other people than you can on your own. And I think that goes to finding your purpose as well. We need, just as a simple example, we need people around us who can shine a light on our blind spots. You know, we need people around us who can make us aware of ideas that are right under our nose, but we might be missing. I was listening back this morning to my most recent podcast interview that came out the week we were recording this. And my guest Simone Heng was saying how she needed someone else to tell her what she should be speaking about and writing about. And it was under her nose the whole time, but she hadn't sort of joined the dots together. So I think that that's one example about where having the right, robust, strong, open relationships with people where you talk honestly to each other, you can be sounding boards for each other, is going to help you in finding that purpose.
Do you find in the work that you do and in the people you interact with that there are a lot of them that are struggling with the whole concept of purpose and sort of what their life and their career is supposed to be all about?
Yeah, you always find people who consciously are aware of that and are really trying to find the light at the end of the tunnel, if you like. I think there's probably a lot more that aren't aware that they're struggling with a lack of purpose. And I think that at various stages of our lives and our careers, most of us have that challenge at some point or another, but it's only a small proportion who actually recognize it.
Yeah, I think that's really true because in the work that I do, I generally start off talking with people, and just as you and I would do if we were meeting for the first time, we would be talking about, what do we do? What is it that we do for a living? And how do we go about doing it? How do we approach things? But then I get to the point of talking with people about, well, why do you do what you do? And a lot of times I get the deer in the headlights kind of looks, and the answers that I get are not really, they're not well thought out. And in many cases, they don't make a lot of sense because people say, well, I do it because that's what my mom or dad wanted me to do, or I do it because, hey, you've got to do something to make a living. But then I probe a little bit further and I say, well, gee, are you really passionate about what you do? When you wake up in the morning and your feet hit the floor, are you excited about going forward and really having a wonderful day? And most of the time, probably 70, 80% of the time, people say, no, I hate what I do. And it's like, well, if you hate what you do, then why in the world are you doing it? And that's where I think, to your point, we need people who will speak into our lives, people who are perhaps a little bit further down the road in their journey and perhaps have a purpose to say, okay, why are you doing all this stuff, and what is it that you really want your life to count for? One of the things that I comment a lot about, because I am a coach, just as you, I talk about coaches need coaches, and I have several of them that I work with, and one in particular is a woman who lives in Indiana, and she is one of the greatest listeners in the world. And sometimes I will be talking with her about something, and she'll say, whoa, wait a minute, back up and replay that for me. And when I do, she'll say something like, well, where did that belief come from? And I didn't even know that I had it. And as to your point, it's right under our noses sometimes, but we need people who will speak into our lives, and people with whom we have a strong enough relationship that they have the permission to do that, and we won't be offended when they comment on things. So in your work, then, how do you feel that purpose contributes to things like relationships and building effective teams and businesses and things like that?
Well, I think it goes to your last, or the point you opened the last comment with, and that is that too many people do things almost automatically without that sense of purpose, without that thinking behind it. And you use the career path as an illustration of that, and it's probably the most obvious illustration in terms of what you do. And I've been there. I was going to do accountancy at university because I was expected to be an accountant or lawyer. And I went into the jobs because they were a job,
Uh-huh.
and they fit that bill. They ticked the box of paying me a wage at the time, and I even fell into what I was doing now. But it just turned out that was the right fit for me, and not everyone's that lucky. In terms of how it shows up in the work that I do, it's no different. I'm talking about building strong professional relationships with people. So by that I mean surrounding yourself with a network of people who are in a position to help you in your career or in your role, who want to help you and who know how to help you. And that takes some strategic thinking, which goes against the grain for how we tend to operate our relationships. What we tend to do is meet people we like and we stay in touch with them. If we don't like them, we don't. And, when we need something, we say, who do I know who can help me? Where a sense of purpose comes into that is taking a step back and say, what am I trying to achieve in my career? What's my job? What am I trying to achieve as part of that? Who do I need around me to help me? And do I know the right people? And that's the sense of purpose, the strategic thinking behind it. Now, the important thing here is that you are strategic in the background. You're strategic in the planning. You're strategic in the setup, if you like, but you are human and authentic in the way that you engage and relate with people, which means you don't pretend to be someone you're not. You don't flatter when you don't mean it. You don't try to force a relationship that isn't naturally there. There are going to be people that you can build mutual respect with, but you're never going to build mutual friendship with. And I think it's very similar with your career. You are very considered about where you want to go in your career and what you're working towards. But when you're doing your job, you focus on the job in front of you and not what's relevant to 5 years' time. That's all done in the background. So I think the two fit quite closely together in that sense.
Yeah, very, very good. There's some good, powerful learning there, Andy. And it's interesting, and I don't know if you've had the same experience in your work in the UK, but here in the United States, so much of the time when people say attend a networking event, it's all about passing out business cards. And if you can work the room and pass out as many business cards as possible, and it's like, here's my business card, give me a call. Here's my business card, do business with me. And a friend of mine takes an exactly opposite approach. He said, when I go to a networking event, he said, I generally don't even take business cards with me. He said, I go in and he said, I sort of walk around and just chat with people. And he said, if I have one meaningful conversation during the time that I'm there, and we agree to get together and have coffee or lunch or something like that and begin building that relationship, that's a successful event for me. Is that sort of where you're coming from as well?
It is to a large degree. There's one bit that I'll disagree with him very strongly on, and I'll come to that. I mean, my first few years in this space were focused on networking events, and I've written a book about how to work a room, as Susan Rowan would say. So very much, if you go onto YouTube and look at some of my videos, you'll find where I'm talking about networking events, and my opening to my talk was walking into the audience and going up to people at random and saying, have my card, here's my card. Oh, I'm not interested in yours, you're not relevant to me. I'll have my card. I'd have fun with that approach because it's painful when you see that at events. We have to be culturally sensitive here. If you go to Asia, then people will hand out, as they call them, name cards, and it's part of the culture to give everyone your name card. So there is a cultural difference there. I don't think that the cultural drive behind doing it in Asia is the same as the cultural drive in the US or the UK, and they are similar in both. And I've been to events in the US when I've worked with clients over there. But when I got into this business because my father had co-founded a business network. So my first 7 years were working with him, training people to make the most of those events. And when we launched a new group, already in place when I joined, and for a while until the penny dropped for me, was we would do an icebreaker where we would tell people to collect as many cards as they could and give a business card holder away to the winner. And as soon as the penny dropped, I stopped that because I said it's sending the wrong message. The message is quality, not quantity. My business strapline is connecting is not enough. And that connecting can be people who go to a networking event and exchange cards and think job done, and sit on the train afterwards counting how many cards they've got, or people who click connect and someone else clicks accept on LinkedIn and they never talk to each other. I'm much more focused on conversation rather than connection. So I agree with your friend, your colleague to a degree. I've always said that, have a couple of good conversations that you follow up with and you build a relationship with, and over time you will build a quality network around you. Where I disagree, and I've heard it many times, is not taking business cards. I think it's disrespectful to people who ask for your card. I think you should have a card to give to them, because very often when people tell me they don't have a business card, they say it in a certain tone, as if they're better because they're better than me because I don't bring my business cards to events. You hear that come through as if they're tricking the game or something. Well, actually, if I ask for your card, it's because I want to follow up with you.
Okay.
So actually denying me that is a message you don't want to connect with me which can be taken disrespectfully. And if you took that into an Asian context, it would be very disrespectful. So I think have cards. I think, I wrote a blog a number of years ago, why the death of the business card has been widely misreported. I think was the title. And it's because this comes in waves every few years, where people say technology has progressed so far that we don't need business cards anymore. And I made a number of points in there as to why they're still valid. And I believe that's still the case. I must admit, every event I've been to since lockdowns and the pandemic hasn't ended, but since lockdowns have ended, I have forgotten to take my business cards because I've got out of the habit. But there's not that many events before people start calling me a hypocrite. And I do think that the pandemic and the lockdowns associated and our move to virtual connection will potentially come closer to killing the business card than any technology has ever done. But ultimately, this came up at an event I spoke at recently where someone said to me they'd like to talk to me further about me working with them. Now, I want to have control of that conversation to be able to follow up. They've expressed interest in working with me. And I said, do you have a card so I can contact you? She said, no, but I'll connect with you on LinkedIn. Problem with that is the next day when I'm in the office, and often it might not be the next day, do I have a physical reminder of that conversation? which
Mm.
is lost in my LinkedIn network. So I have to then put a reminder into my phone with her name and so forth. If I've got a business card, I've got a physical reminder to follow up. And I haven't seen any technology replicate that yet.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that because one of the things that I see becoming more popular, and I don't think it's the lion's share of things, is people using digital business cards, where rather than having a business card, I have a little aluminum or whatever card that has my information imprinted on it. I tap it on your phone, and you have my contact information. So I take it from your facial expression, you're not a fan.
I think they're fine to a degree, but for me, the purpose of a business card is a physical reminder to follow up. As soon as that data's got into my phone, it's in with thousands of other contacts. This all comes from the misconception that all the power at an event, a networking event, is in the conversation at the event. It's not. The power is in the follow-up.
Ah,
And you need the reminder of the follow-up. Now, I talk to you at an event, you put your data in my phone, we don't talk again. 6 months later, I'm scrolling through my phone, I see your name, I go, who the hell is that? So what value has that brought either of us? That data only has value when you stick in my mind, when I remember you. So one of the things that I talk about in a lot of my work is the 7 stages of professional relationship. And the mistake a lot of people make is they don't go, they think networks are binary. You're in my network or you're out of my network.
right.
And if we meet at an event and exchange data, you're in my network. But the truth is you're not. Stage 1 is recognize. And that means that I recognize you when I see you. Now, if we just have a conversation at an event and tap phones together, how long does that recognition last without follow up?
Not very long.
Not very long. So I need to get to stage 2. I need to build a wall around the outside of my network so you stay in, take you to stage 2 where we know each other. I know who you are when I see you, not just recognize you, but I know who you are, what you do, what you stand for, where you sit in my world. Then to like and trust. And then we get to what I call the sweet spot, levels 5 and 6, where we're supporters of each other. Where if you needed something, you could pick up the phone to me and I would help you. Or level 6, where you're an advocate, or I'm an advocate for you, where you don't have to pick up the phone for help. I'm looking or recognizing opportunities for you all the time. And then level 7 is friend. So just banging phones together or a card on a phone and exchanging data, that doesn't mean you're in my network. It means we recognize each other if we see each other tomorrow, but not
Yeah,
for much
and
after
you know,
that.
and that's interesting because one of the conversations I have with people, especially you had been talking about LinkedIn before, there are so
Mm,
many that people on LinkedIn that are what they call LinkedIn open networkers, and they
Lions.
have thousands and thousands of people in their network. But when you ask them, say, "Well, you've got 25,000, connections on LinkedIn. How many of them do you personally know?" For the most part, it's less than 3 or 400. And so it's almost like, why do you have this huge network if you're not connected with those people?
So let's go back to purpose because I've explored this. I've got a lot of friends that are LinkedIn open networkers or lions, and I challenged them on it. In fact, I ran a LinkedIn training program for a client with a fellow Andy, but that Andy is a lion. So we took the two approaches to our clients. Um, I spoke to him a few years before that, and I'd given a talk to professional speakers, and Andy was in the audience. And he said, I agree with everything you say about LinkedIn, but here's why I'm a lion. And I've spoken to a few as to why. So this goes to purpose. So I think there are 2 reasons people are lions. Number one is the lack of purpose reason, which is I've heard that the more connections you've got, the better your network is. Therefore, I'll connect with anyone. Why shouldn't I? Abundance mentality, etc., without understanding what that actually means. That doesn't work. The considered strategic approach is not one I take, but it's one I respect, and I recognize that by not taking it, I'm making sacrifices. And the way Andy described it to me, I think, is very a strong description. He said, I'm not networking, I'm marketing. So
Mm,
he's not interested in conversation with those people, in conversation being two-way. In fact, he often mutes notifications about other people's activity. He is interested in broadcasting. He's interested in marketing. So if I've got friends like Andy and other people who get way more engagement on their posts than I do, and it drives business to them because LinkedIn is a marketing channel for them. It's not a connection channel. It's not a relationship building channel. It is a marketing channel, and they pump their message out there constantly, and people engage with it. And because they have a broad network, it's not a network, it's a target audience.
Mhm.
And because they have a broad target audience, therefore they get a lot of engagement on their posts, which in turn gives those posts more visibility. Because if you like or comment on my posts on LinkedIn, your network sees it in their newsfeed. So the broader your network, the further the reach is. So there is method behind the madness. There's purpose in that approach. It just isn't relationship building purpose. It's not networking, it's marketing.
Well, and the thing that concerns me about that, and I get the concept that when you have a broad network like that and you're marketing to them, that it's the philosophy. If I throw enough mud up against the wall, some of it will stick. A very small percentage, but if I have a huge network, that percentage might still be a significant number of people. But I go back to what you were talking about, though, as far as your stages of relationship development and the concept that people tend to do business with people they know, like, and trust. And so for me, it's it's in the quality of the relationship and being able to trust you before I will, especially in a coaching arrangement where I'm going to be talking to you about some very, very personal things in my life. I first have to trust you before I can do that.
Yeah, I agree. Let me play devil's advocate on this because I do see both sides, and my approach is very much similar to yours. But playing devil's advocate, the way Andy, the LinkedIn Open Networker, would respond is if you consistently, and actually I'm saying this because I would agree with it, if you consistently produce good content that engages people, you don't need a personal relationship to build trust. People trust brands, people trust Apple, people trust Nike, and so forth. Brands are brilliant at building trust through marketing and advertising. So if you consistently put out thought-provoking, engaging content, people will build trust in you and they will say, well, actually, I want to work with you. And I could argue that as a coach, as a consumer of coaching, I might be more comfortable being coached by someone I don't have a personal relationship with than by someone I do. So there are elements of that in there as well. Now, there's a strong element of devil's advocate in there, and but there's equally a part of me that recognizes that argument is valid. I think that if you take LinkedIn, if we take this as a LinkedIn conversation specifically rather than using it as an example, but I guess it works both ways. Like everything in life, there's shades of grey, and you find the shade of grey that suits you. So, for example, the way I teach to use LinkedIn is predominantly around referrals. It's also about educating your network about what you're doing and growing it to a degree, but it is predominantly referral focused. If my approach to LinkedIn was 100% purely about referrals, I would only connect to people who I would be happy to refer and I felt would be happy to refer me, because there's no point in diluting that network any further. If I want to raise my profile in my industry, so let's say as a speaker, for example, I want meeting planners to know about me, I'm then expanding that circle a bit by saying, if a meeting planner wants to connect, or a senior executive who might book me for their organization wants to connect, I'll connect with them, even if I don't know them. If I want to expand it a bit more, and this is for me, people who have been to my talks or have read my books, message me and say, I loved your book, or I love that talk, can I connect? That's me thinking, well, it would look rude not to and churlish not to connect. So
Right.
there are different factors, different criteria for connection that I consider, and everyone should do the same. That leaves me with what I call a semi-open network. My ideal would be closed. I've got, I think, about 3 short of 5,000 connections at this stage. And if I looked through them, I would probably be able to tell you who a third of them are. Now, that's too low a proportion for my preference, but it's that blend of being on there for a very long time. I think I joined in 2004 or 5. and the criteria that I've taken, but it's never been a wholly open criteria.
Yeah, but I think you make a very, very good point there, and that is in being strategic and understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And even with that, and I use LinkedIn, I use my YouTube channel, I use Facebook to be able to to connect with people. But one of the things that I do is, let's say somebody watches a video on my YouTube channel and they want to connect with me for potential coaching. The first thing I do is say, we're going to spend 60 minutes together, just free time, free initial consultation. And the whole goal behind it is not to solve their problems, it's to get to know them and to be able to at least build that beginning relationship to say, to answer primarily two questions. Number one, do I have the skill set that you need to be able to address the issues that you're having? And number two, can we work together? Is there a personality fit that says that, that we can work together and that there is going to be an ongoing relationship down the road? So I guess maybe I use a bit of a hybrid, saying reach out, connect with people, but then use that as a filter process to make sure that that I'm rendering a good service to people who will resonate with me.
And I think that's fair enough. And each person will find the right shades of grey for them. Couple of things I would say on that, in my experience, personal experience, and yours may be different, and quite possibly will be. I tend to get a lot of people reach out to connect without saying they want to work with me. So they want to connect, they want to hear what I have to share, they want to be in touch, and the working together might come later. It's quite a small proportion that will say I want to work with you, and an even smaller proportion that will say that in their connection requests.
Right.
So if they're saying that, then that goes into a sales pipeline process, and I have, not as generous as you, I have a 15-minute discovery call for that.
Okay.
That purpose. I know people who say, well, if you want to connect, let's talk. And actually, some people respond to me and say, that's fine, well, let's book in a call. I don't have the luxury of that time. I do get a lot of people who want to connect with me, and I can't book in all that time. I've just had someone I am connected to say, we still haven't had a one-to-one call, and I've had to say, let's talk in the summer, because I just don't have that luxury. So I think you have to balance. The biggest pushback from my clients, and I work with people who work in corporates, particularly on this type of thing, the biggest pushback from them is time. So they're not going to find a half an hour even to get to know someone. There's got to be a demanding reason. And I'm pretty much the same now, because I have to be. Mm-hmm. I have to filter calls, because otherwise I'm just not going to service my clients. I'm not going to grow my business. I'm not going to work. And there's always a sacrifice along the way, because you don't know what could come from the call that you're not taking, but you've got to look after yourself, your sanity, and your health as well, and manage your time in that sense. So I think that there's the sales process where you do create that time, and then there's the connection process where it depends where you are on your journey and how much time you have available. Ideal world, if someone shows an interest, you say, yeah, let's have a half-hour call and get to know each other and see. But it's not always possible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's I agree with you. There's a relatively small number of people who will connect with me from the standpoint of, I want to work with you. So I look at it in several different phases. There are people who, as an example, who will subscribe to my YouTube channel, and the content that they're getting there is sufficient for them. They're getting what they need. There are other people who will connect with the idea of, well, over a period of time, let's get to know each other and see where things go. And then there will be that small percentage who will say, I really resonate with you. I want to work with you. One of the things that I've also done too, and I don't know if you do this or what you would have to say about it, Andy, is I have an intake form where when somebody says, I'm potentially interested in working with you, I send them to my website. There's an intake form that they can fill out. The system automatically sends it to me, and I can get a chance to review it and say, is this person somebody I really want to move forward with? So that sort of precludes the people where I'm not having a phone call with you, but I don't know if we'd work together anyway. I can at least go through and say, yeah, this is a potentially good fit, or no, it's not.
I have the same. I must admit, no one ever wants to use it, but it's there. But it is, and it says, fill if you want this 15-minute call with me, fill this out so I know more before. And it encourages people, ask, what if you've read my book, one of my books, what did you take from it? If you've listened to the podcast, what did you take from it? So it's to try to point people to other resources to filter out people, so that you get serious conversations. I mean, one of the reasons that I do interviews like this, and I have my podcast and my books, and I'm sure the same for you, is I'm able to create content that's freely accessible to people that can't work with me for
Right.
whatever reason. And I think it's important that it's there. And then you create the space for the conversation with those that do want a more personal engagement.
Yeah, exactly right. There's one other, as we sort of wind down today in our conversation, Andy, there's one other topic that I want to talk about and get
Sure.
your perspective on, and that is the impact of purpose on our ability to have influence in our world. Talk to that a little bit, and how has your experience been in working with people in the area of influence?
Well, I don't think it's too dissimilar to what we've been talking about, to be honest with you. I think if you want to influence certain areas, you can use social media, which we've been talking a lot about. You can leverage your networks to get that influence for you, but you have to know who it is you want to influence and what ends, and therefore what the message needs to be. I have uh, I have an exercise that I run with clients called the influencer map, and a few clients use it before a number of key meetings and when a number of key projects kick off, and it's quite a lot of thought goes into it to do it effectively. But what you do is you put the person that you most want to influence at the center of that map, and around them, who do they listen to? Who influences them? And then you ask yourself, how well do I know that person? How well do I know what's important to them, and how influential are they? When you've done that work, you can then identify who your key influencers are on the person who you want to receive your message. And you can work out what it is you need to share with them in order for your message to get through to you. Need to create a message that's both sticky and transferable. So something that people remember accurately and can repeat accurately. And it's not just that they can repeat it accurately, it's that they want to. That's what makes a message viral, is that people
Mm,
want to share it. So you have to understand each of the parties in that chain for that to work. Because if I tell you what I want someone to know, but that message doesn't resonate with you, let alone with the other person, you're not going to share it. It's not viral.
right.
So purpose comes in by understanding your starting point, understanding where you want to get to, and then planning each route. And obviously, a clear sense of purpose is going to drive that. And look, you can take that very theoretical, if you like, approach. I mean, it's a practical exercise, but it's based on a theoretical approach to it. Or you can just take common sense and say, so many things we want to achieve. Um, Decisions are made when we're not in the room to influence them. So we need others to influence on our behalf. And clarity about that and understanding what we want to achieve means that we then move to the exercise to work through that. And so sense of purpose, I think sense of purpose is the step before strategy. And what I talk is professional relationship strategy. A strategy comes out of a desire to achieve something, which comes from a sense of purpose. So I think that's why what you do and what I do are so closely aligned, because they're part of the same chain.
Absolutely. And that last part was brilliant, Andy. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's really good stuff. As we wind down, why don't you tell people how they can connect with you, and we'll wrap up that way.
Probably people are probably thinking, yeah, I can't. He doesn't want me. If you did want to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm easy to find. I've got one of those names. There aren't many of us in the world, but if you did want to connect with me on LinkedIn, personalize your connection request and a little bit more than just you saw this. Give me a reason to connect. But you can follow me on LinkedIn as well. But I think the easiest way to find out all of my links is to go to linktree.com. No, not linktree.com. So I always say that. Linktree, which is linktr.com linktree.ee/Andy Lopata. So that's Linktree with the dot before the double E/Andy Lopata. And as this is on YouTube, you'll have the spelling of my name there, Lopata. And then that has all of my links. I'm just about to start a new blog for Psychology Today. So that will be added there fairly soon as well as a new link. But on that site, you've got all of my social media, you've got YouTube for tons of videos, you've got my books, you've got some blogs of interest and articles of interest, linked to the Connected Leadership podcast, which is my own podcast, and more. So it's all in one place for you.
Excellent, excellent. Well, Andy, thank you so much for taking the time today. You shared some wonderful content with my listeners, and I look forward to staying connected and continuing to build our relationship. God bless you, my friend.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me, Gary.
Thanks so much for joining us today. If you found this video to be insightful, be sure to hit that like button. And if you want more content that will educate you about how to design and achieve a more fulfilling life, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next video.